Hi, Lilian. I don't know, this is kind of a crazy birthday present, but if this is what you want, this is the way I'll tell it. Anyway, Owen and I would go to the pool and then we go out to the trellis. And sometimes, what's his name? Max? Yeah. And we would have dinner together, Max and I. And uh, if there was a good movie on, like anybody with uh, Judy Garland or Marilyn Monroe, I knew that Max wanted to go and see it. And oh, and he knew it too. He knew how much Max loved these movies. And he'd roam around and be a pain in the neck, and poor Max would get frustrated, but that was okay. He saw most of it. Anyway, Max would leave after he had his dessert and the movie was over, and I would read Owen a story. Now that wasn't good enough because it never put him to sleep. But what I would do is turn off the lights and I'd make up a story for him. And it was always more or less the same theme. There was there was a magic unicorn, and he was up in the hills of Brooklyn. And I'd turn the light off so he would get tired and go to sleep. But he loved these stories and he knew them by heart. And God, if I just missed a few words or anything, he would remind me. Well, this is one that I told him. I told him about his mom, Jane. Jane had a lot of nieces and nephews because all of my children and my Ernie and Patty, they all had 2 to 3 children, and anyway, and I would always be around this unicorn who had magic. He, he, he had magic about him because one of the things he could do, he could hear a teardrop all the way from Brooklyn. He would come down some of the hills, and then he would see who was crying. Now Jane was the baby of the family, and she was terrific with the kids. She loved to do skits. You know, they, you know. Well, anyway, she would have skits, and she would always bring them down, and they would do their skits. Well, anyway, she had a lot of fun, and the kids just adored her. She's magic with children. They like her. But this one time, she was at Jane's house, and they had a party in the garden, and the kids came down, and Jane had a skit for them where they all sang and danced, and they were adorable. But Jane was happy because she loved her grandchildren, and they loved her. And she loved doing skits, shows. But that night she was kind of blue because she felt lonely. And she really wished that she had a baby of her own, or she wouldn't be so lonely. But she went in the garden, and this unicorn had magic. He could hear a teardrop all the way while he was up in the hills of Brooklyn. And he would come down and see why was Jane crying? Well, she didn't have a baby of her own. And she was, in her 20s. She wanted a baby, but she didn't have any special boyfriend or anything like that. And she was crying. So the unicorn came down and he spoke to her. He said, Jane, don't cry. Soon you will have a baby of your own, and he would be a beautiful boy, beautiful. And he would be a lot of fun and smart, handsome, and he would be yours. And so anyway, she believed him. And sure enough, after so many months and everything, she did have a baby, and it was a beautiful boy. And he's told her to name him Owen. I think she had read a book about something about Owen Meany. It's a book that was kind of fun. And that's what happened. So we had another baby in the family, and his name was Owen. And everyone adored Owen because he was wonderful. But Jane had to work to support him, so she asked me if I would babysit for him. And I had weekends off, and I belonged to a swimming pool. And Owen was my friend, my buddy, and I just loved him so much. Anyway, when he got a little bit older, he would sleep on the weekends with me. But I had to, but I would tell him stories or read stories to him. And that wasn't enough. He would just want, he would never fall asleep, so I had to turn the lights off and make up stories. And this was the story I told him was about the unicorn who came down to see Jane and told her not to cry, that she would soon have a baby. And there he was, our Owen. And I was so happy because I could be with him all weekends. We would go out for dinner. When he got older, we went to movies, and we had a great time. But I had to, in order for him to fall asleep, I would make up these stories and turn the light off. And eventually he would fall asleep. But he never forgot what that story was about. He knew that story, inside and outside. And if I thinking he was almost asleep, I would make a mistake or for something. He said, "No, no, Grandma, this is it." So eventually, that's what we did, pool time, museum time, movies. Owen was my best friend. I loved him. And we'd go to the museum, and he loved Pokemon. One time he got lost at the Metropolitan. So finally I said, "Oh, where's Owen?" And I went to the guard, and he says, "Oh, he's probably downstairs with security." So sure enough, I went down to security, and there is my Owen, showing the guards his really truly works of art, and they were the Pokemons. He looks so cute, showing the Pokemon, telling everybody what they meant. Pokemon, I wonder what happened to Pokemon. But anyway, he had a good time, and it was the best time of my life. I mean, I have loads of wonderful grandchildren. I love them all. But Owen needed me, and Jane needed me a little, so it was fine. So he grew up, he went to school, and he had loads of friends and a beautiful girlfriend. He played on the basketball team, and he was very, very handsome, but so nice. And he and I were the best of friends. Unfortunately, when he was 20 years old, he went to a party, and he didn't wake up. He was in the hospital for a week, and they kept him alive because he was a healthy young man, and there were people who needed him. And they asked us if we couldn't have his organs. And it was awful sad, but I thought, I don't know how I could deal with it, but these people were so wonderful, and she was going home to die. And just before she was being discharged, they said, "We have an organ for you. We have a young, healthy man, and, he has a healthy liver, and he'll save your life." Well, we've been friends with him now. It's been a few years. Owen was 20 years old. Now he'd be 22 or 23. I have, my memory goes, but anyway. And we have these people. Neela, her name is, right, Jane? Anyway, so, yes, anyway. We had all those years with Owen, and I should be grateful for that. But I wish I could have had him forever and ever. But I'm not going to be around that long anyway, so whatever. Oh, Lily, thank you for asking me to tell that story. And thank you for loving Owen and loving our family. And if there's ever anything I can do, and I love the fact that you love Uncle Homer, because believe me, he was not exactly the greatest man in the world, but he was right, you know? People do not give up their children. And I love my family because I know they're a little cuckoo, but I've learned over the years how much I respect them. And anyway, yes. Happy birthday again. I didn't tell it very well, but it was the best I could do.
Perfect, Mama. It was perfect. I'm going to stop it now. Okay.
I love